who are struggling with manpower and weapons. Joining me now is the Heritage Foundation Vice President of National Security and Foreign Policy, Deputy National Security Advisor under Trump, and the author of the forthcoming book, The Battle for the Jewish State, How Israel and America Can Win. Victoria Coates back with us. Victoria, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thanks, Maria. Good to be with you.
Before we get to Israel, I want to get your take on the conflict on Ukraine and Russia. President Trump has said many times this war will be over before I even take office. And already you're seeing Russia, try to get Trump's attention, saying we want to reset. This was like sort of the messages coming from Russia. What are your thoughts on the latest upheaval yesterday with more fire emerging?
No, it's a curious situation in Ukraine because President Biden, apparently taken aback by the some 10,000 North Korean troops that are being deployed to Russia right now, decided to allow Ukraine for the first time in 2.5 years to use ATACMS and HIMARS, long-range U.S. missiles, to strike at Russia. The question is, why is this a good idea now? Why wasn't it a good idea 2 years ago when Ukraine had the advantage? Now it looks like we're kind of drifting towards World War III, as the president-elect has said, and as Don Jr. said, in a weird incremental way. So, I don't necessarily object to this move because I don't think Russia's been very sensitive to Ukraine's borders. But I want to know why now, and are we concerned by a potential Russian escalation, even a nuclear escalation coming in retaliation?
Well, I mean, would they do such a thing as Trump is readying to return to the White House?
Well, I mean, hopefully not. I think that Putin has signaled he knows there's going to be the new sheriff in town that he's used to dealing with, and I think it's worth repeating that the one president over the last three under whom Ukraine was not invaded was President Trump. And right. So hopefully Putin will, stay in his box a little bit, knowing Trump is coming back, knowing that there's going to be a strong hand on the American tiller. But, you worry that if you take an action like this kind of responsively, almost defensively, it could lead to escalation.
Sure. Meanwhile, President Biden is in Rio de Janeiro today for the start of the G20 summit. This comes after he attended the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit over the weekend in Lima, Peru, where he held his final sit-down with Chinese President Xi Jinping. And Xi apparently told Biden that China is now ready to work with the incoming administration. He cautioned the U.S. once again to make the wise choice to keep relations stable. I guess he's hinting at he doesn't welcome the tariffs that are coming. At the summit, though, Biden was awkward. He stood in the back corner of the APEC family photo. Look at this photo. We've got Biden all the way in the back. And who's in the front? Front and center, Xi Jinping. There's Biden all the way to the right, Xi Jinping front and center in the front line. The world leaders were ordered alphabetically, we're told, by country, but past APEC photos show the U.S. president, President Trump, and President Biden in the center spot. I'll never forget that famous move of President Trump when he elbowed his way all the way to the front of the spot, and the U.S. was prominently displayed, the U.S. president right there. Not so in this most recent photo. Victoria, your thoughts?
No, this was really unfortunate, and certainly the president-elect, if he understands anything, it's optics, and he knows that the United States should always be first. They don't do these things by height. It's ridiculous, and so it was such a display of weakness by Biden, the optics of the whole visit were terrible. Xi unveiled a $1.6 billion deep-water port that China's just invested in Lima, giving them a massive naval asset in the Western Hemisphere. Meanwhile, Secretary Blinken comes out and announces we're investing in some kind of regional railroad, which does absolutely nothing to advance our interests. So, this is kind of the coup de grace of 4 years of Biden-Harris weakness on China. Fortunately, as President Trump comes back in, as you said, China fears these tariffs. They're in a bad economic situation themselves, and I think President Trump wants to get along with them. He said, I don't want a war with China. I want them to do well, but not if they're, being very predatory, and especially if they're being very, very active in our hemisphere, which is something I don't think he'll tolerate.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Trump has said that many times, and there's a piece in the FT this morning Victoria. The Financial Times writes this: if China's statistics can't be scrutinized, doubts about the economy will only grow. In other words, people do not believe this fantasy of China growing 5 and 6 and 7%. One analyst, Logan Wright of the Rhodium Group, estimated that 2023 Chinese growth is actually around 1.5%. So, you know, we don't know about these numbers coming out of communist China. And then there's Iran reportedly offering a written assurance to the Biden administration that it would not try to kill President-elect Trump. According to the Wall Street Journal, the Iranian message was, quote, delivered on October 14th. It came in response to a private written American warning sent to Tehran back in September. We were all wondering when the Biden administration was going to react to the fact that the Iranians have a fatwa on Trump's back. An Israeli strike on Beirut yesterday, also killing the spokesperson for Hezbollah, coming as the Iranian-backed terrorist group is reviewing a new U.S.-Israeli ceasefire proposal. Victoria, assess the situation between Iran and its proxies on Israel.
No, I think we have a very, very dangerous situation with Iran here. And to the point that we were just discussing with China, China's bankrolling all of this, Maria. They're busily buying 1.75 million barrels of Iranian oil a day. So they're essentially being the bankers to all of this. And, you know, Iran is increasingly aggressive in the region. They're not at all concerned about the Biden-Harris administration, but clearly they are concerned about President Trump. And as you said, they've had this plot to murder him since apparently the spring. And so what I would have liked to see out of the president was in June, when those plots were first revealed, a very strong public statement. I don't think we need to be playing post office with the mullahs. I think you just come out publicly and say, if you harm a hair on his head, you know, you're going to be glass. You know, this just simply won't be tolerated, rather than try to engage in some kind of diplomatic niceties over it. But I think, again, Iran is terrified of a strong U.S. president coming back in.
That's right. Great point all around. Victoria, always a pleasure. Thanks so much.